This is Agronomy Moment. I'm Wendell Cohen.
Catching all of our bloopers.
Okay, we are recording now, and we've had a few technical difficulties this morning, and I guess I need to keep an eye on this proportion here. I don't know where I can prop this thing. Oh gosh, because I got to see it in my privacy screen. Really messes me up because I can't see from.
Oh, you have one of those fancy.
Yeah,
fancy screens.
It's really nice for sitting in a plane or whatever. But anyway, we've had a few technical difficulties here, and hopefully they're behind us. And folks, we're welcome to welcome you.
We're holding our tongue just right that this is going to work.
Yeah, it would go a little differently, and we hope it don't turn into a video salad of audio and different things going on. But anyway, away we go. Today's topic we want to talk about briefly is charcoal rot. And Celena, just help me understand a little bit what happens specifically, why we get charcoal rot, and why is this a concern, and when is it a concern, I guess.
So this year, for example, and we'll get into it when we get into the slides, but it was kind of our perfect storm. Being in fields, walking fields, especially during the reproductive time frame, charcoal rot was getting really overlooked, and rightfully so. SDS invaded numerous fields and caused detrimental losses in a lot of areas, and around here too. I mean, an area where typically SDS might not be as prevalent, but really noticing that charcoal rot is getting overshadowed a little bit. So I understand why, and but with the conditions we had in 2023, it was very favorable for the presence of charcoal rot. So charcoal rot is Macrophyna phaseolina is what causes the charcoal rot. And on the picture there, those little black fruiting bodies are called microsclerotia. And that's kind of
Is this like right here?
Yep. Those are those little, even in the cortex and the pith of that. Yep.
And then down into even these little dots.
Yep. Yep. So that's what's those microsclerotia, or those little black tiny fruiting body specks that we see there. So the first observation of charcoal rot in soybeans, I should have probably said that specifically talking about soybeans, because this is also a disease that can be found in corn as well.
And we've seen a lot of that in corn. Like we're kind of more so with that. Right?
Yeah, I should probably do one on corn too. Anyways.
Sure.
So just to kind of dig into the specifics a little bit, it's going to survive in the soil. It's a soil-borne pathogen. So and I covered the microsclerotia, but really a lot of hosts there. So over 500 hosts, but the most common ones that we're probably going to see in our geography or discuss are mostly corn and soybeans. A little bit of baby grain sorghum, but by and large.
Sorry to interrupt, but I just was curious on this. Is this something you said it's soil-borne? So if we have you were talking about the type of year we had in 23, clarify that a little bit. First of all, what are some of the conditions that it's required in? If we have a wet year, let's say we have a series of wet years, what happens after that? We have a drought after that. Just explain a little bit about the longevity of that.
So I would say that if we had a couple of wetter years, this isn't a disease that is most likely going to show up. However,
in those wet years.
In those wet years. However, it is still possible because of its infection period. So it can infect, like we see a lot of other seedling diseases, within 3 weeks of planting. So if we have that infection occur during that time frame, the condition, or I shouldn't say the conditions, the symptoms aren't expressed until we have those favorable outdoor, high temperatures, droughty
I see.
areas. So if we have that present and we did have that early initial infection, then yes, we can still see that potentially even in a wet year. If a wet year turns off hot and dry,
It can
Just-
still come
I would say we can still see it.
out. And will that pathogen remain in the soil until I guess that weather pattern erupts that's conducive to it? Like, is it something we've seen this year? If it was in if it was kind of bad in your field this year, it's there now. From now on, it's not like it's going to go away.
Yeah, and the thing about that too is, I brought up a point over maybe doing this on corn. It'd probably be good for me to do so, just to have that information, because this is a disease that exists in corn. So if we do our normal rotation, like normal,
Yep.
it supports lower volumes, I guess. I don't know if volumes is necessarily the word I want to use. Lower populations of the disease. The corn is so you have less potential, I guess, incidence from a corn to soybean rotation. Because you have lower populations being supported in the corn crop, higher populations supported in the soybean crop. So even though we had it in our soybeans this year, to the detriment that we did, maybe interesting to see how high that incidence is in our corn next year.
So it's possible. You're saying corn and soybean rotation is a good thing,
Yes.
even with helping
Yep.
out with the pathogen, even though it infects both.
Yep.
Okay.
One other thing that I kind of wanted to hit on is something I had written down here. Thinking about 2023, the dry, warm conditions that we had. As I was doing a little bit of research on charcoal rot, in 2003 and 2012, and especially 2012, it comes to my mind because in 2003 I was just a little tight, so I don't even remember. But 2012 was a really dry year again. And in both of those years, charcoal rot was the second highest yield loss disease. So the importance of that, I think, and especially after the dry year, just to kind of put that into numbers, or not really specific numbers, but to kind of give an idea of
How great the magnitude of
how
losses.
great it can be in comparison. Yes, SDS and our nematode problems are going to be by and large more detrimental yield losses in comparison. But just to kind of put that into perspective, that it still can rob a lot of yield.
And 2023 was another year of that, of those conditions that were very, very similar to 12.
Yes.
Because 23 is only second to 12 in losses.
Yeah,
Exactly.
So, kind of getting into when, I hit it on that a little bit. The initial infection is going to come about 3 to 4 weeks after planting, but it's going to remain dormant until those reproductive stages. And this year, again, the perfect storm. During R1 to R7, those reproductive time frames, we have drought stress and high air temperatures where this thing will express itself. So walking through fields, it wasn't uncommon to see charcoal rot, SDS, brown stem rot, deck Ds, stink bug. I mean, you name it, and then take all of those problems coupled with drought stress.
Yes.
And severe drought stress in a lot of areas this year. So there were just a lot of things working against us, and
the soybeans definitely had a weakened condition from all the problems they were facing.
Yep.
And which compounded the problems. And feel free just to move through these slides as needed.
Okay.
Are you ready for the next one?
Yeah, go ahead. So thinking about how the distribution of charcoal rot, it's been a lot more prevalent in our southern United States areas, but it has been found north Iowa area, even farther north of there, just where we do have warm, dry conditions exist, high air temperatures. That's in as far as it relates to the geography of the United States, but specifically in your fields where this thing's probably going to take off is in your compacted areas, sandy spots, terrace ridges, tree lines. And the photo in the presentation, looking at a couple areas there where one of those conditions is existing, whether it be a compacted area, where we actually have a farther advanced disease than we do in the greener patches. So in those yellow brown patches, those plants are actually well on their way to death. And then in those, how that's moving in those to those green patches, I would say those green patches would probably look very similar eventually, but just kind of looking at those more dry spots of the field and how it is progressing.
So it's in that photo from at a glance, and I know it's not the highest quality photo, but you could almost think it was SDS or something else.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I like to hit on this year and how everything got overshadowed by SDS, and rightfully so, like I said, but the 70-mile-an-hour windshield view, driving by your field, yep, that's SDS. And I'm not saying that it's probably not maybe the case, but maybe a situation where we need to think and scout a little bit more specifically in this case.
It could make a difference in future management practices as far as what you're actually facing and diagnosing what happened there.
Yes, so I probably should have said this when I was talking about infection, but it's really going to infect that root system, and then in turn is going to eventually move to the vascular system. So disrupt our transport of nutrients and water to where we get that yellowing, that wilting of the plant. So I probably should have said that earlier on whenever I was talking about the microsclerotia, the fruiting bodies, and how that will basically rot our root tissue and disrupt the vascular system. So kind of got a little out of line there.
Yeah, you did, but you brought it back in. All right. What about symptoms?
Yep.
We've kind of mentioned this a little bit, but this is a closer view of it.
So this is just kind of showing an closer view of the symptoms that we see. Again, talking about how it's going to disrupt that vascular system, and we're going to get that general yellowing, chlorosis and necrosis of our leaf tissue, petioles there in the picture, just all of that kind of just wilting and eventually dying.
So sometimes I might drive by and think that it was a poor part of the field, and actually it was they're just dying from drought and heat wilt.
Yep. But
okay, so can that happen, or is it generally it's the disease? It's disease related when you see that occurring, not from just. It's not heat alone.
Right. In this specific situation, But as far as heat alone, we probably wouldn't have quite the yellowing.
Oh, yes.
You might still see the wilting.
Yes.
Just because of the drought conditions and water stress, but probably wouldn't.
The yellowing combined with
Yeah.
dying plants and wilting.
And two, one telltale sign is the leaves actually remain attached in this situation.
Okay.
In drought conditions, we might see some of those leaves start to drop.
Gotcha. Okay.
And
This is later. This is a stem. A look at the stems in the vascular system.
Yep. So you can a lot of how I told was kind of a lot of the reports, I guess, and calls that I was getting is, hey, my fields I have a field here and a field right across the road, or this part of the field was 20 bushels less, or what's going on? Can we figure it out? Well, with charcoal rot, actually, in a lot of cases, after harvest, you can probably be able to tell the disease incidence that is there. You can go into your field, peel back that epidermis layer, either if you can't peel back with your fingers, just a knife, and just gently shave that epidermis layer off and see that inner stem tissue. And the two pictures on the right are showing that kind of outside, we're just right inside that epidermis layer. Those black microsclerotia fruiting bodies just looks like all up and down the bottom of that stem there. Then on the left is actually a split stem, and the right part of that is a healthy stem. So white, healthy, and then the left is actually a infected stem with charcoal rot.
And you can see why it's called charcoal rot
Mm-hmm.
in that, right? I mean,
Yep.
it looks charcoaly.
Yeah, they really hurt themselves coming up with a name for this disease.
Right.
So,
And,
and then one other thing too is, you know, if you look at a plant, a physiologically, developed plant, and maybe a plant that has dropped its leaves, petioles. Sometimes one of the symptoms of charcoal rot is that upper third of the plant might only have flat pods. So they'll still have pods, but it'll be flat. So just another thing to kind of look for there.
I did see a lot of that.
And our drought conditions didn't help us. So
Yes.
kind of a compilation of both disease and drought, where the soybeans were just struggling.
But I'm thinking back to some of the fields we harvested where the charcoal rot was present because of the black dust coming off of when you were harvesting, and those are the fields where we walked in and were amazed at how small the beans were on the top and how many flat pods we've seen. So most likely that was direct correlation.
And then one thing too is fields that are under drought stress but without charcoal rot will often survive an extra 2 or more weeks compared to fields that are infected but also drought stressed.
So all else being equal, charcoal rot can reduce the lifespan of that soybean in drought conditions by, what do you say, 1 to 2 weeks?
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Now, tell us a little bit about management. What can we do about it?
Yeah, so this is kind of the hard part, because there honestly isn't much we can do about it. Just for the fact of there's not any active ingredient fungicide from a seed treatment perspective that is helping with charcoal rot. That's not a thing yet. And of course, a foliar fungicide, as far as a disease standpoint, attacking charcoal rot, again, is not. It's a soil-borne. It's there, so we would be thinking probably about a seed treatment fungicide that would potentially help, but
it's not in existence yet.
Right.
And it is a fungus, though.
Yeah.
It is a fungus. So it's just there's not a pesticide that's out that
helps with it. Yeah. Now, I mean, you could get into the foliar fungicide equation over. You could help potentially your plant from a water use sufficiency standpoint. So I mean,
which is a whole other conversation.
Which is a whole exactly.
It's outside the scope of this.
Yep. So we kind of talked about at the beginning, crop rotation, rotating corn, soybean, reducing those plant populations, which most farmers are dabbling into a little bit, anyways.
Yes.
And just to have less competition, plant to plant wise, for that water, and that kind of brings me to that water conversation. Irrigation, if you got it. I mean, that's an easy answer. Narrower rows to be able to get those beans canopied, shade those rows to where we don't lose water due to evaporation. No-till, we've got that covered. Again, no sunlight directly hitting that soil to where we can conserve more water. Reduce compaction to where we have better water penetration through the soil, and reducing our weed competition. Pretty easy one there. Just so we don't have weeds competing for the necessary moisture that the soybeans need. And all that kind of boils down to stress mitigation. So how do we minimize the stress? And this year was very difficult to do so because Mother Nature was not helping us out.
Yeah, and I think about the only thing we can help out with stress mitigation is how we start, and that goes down to, reducing your compaction, reducing your chemicals, your chemistries, your overlapping residuals. We can reduce stress if we start right and have a better start. It gets the plant down the road further.
Yep.
And so, anything else you want to add before we go relating to charcoal rot?
I don't think there's anything else to add other than just if we have another year like we did in 2023, this is just something to keep on
Yep.
keep on your mind and scout for in fields. And call us and have us check it out.
And work on next year's plan for your best stress mitigation, right? We're going to do is summarize this, what to do about this, to prepare us to think about your crop and how to make it have a really good day.
Yep.
Really good day on days next year. So with that, we are going to wrap up this podcast on Chalkborough, and thank you for watching.
If you want alerts on what we are finding in the field, go to topagservices.com/signups to receive alert, or subscribe to our YouTube channel. It is our goal to bring you the most recent and advanced information possible. If you have any questions or feedback, feel free to reach out to us anytime. We also ask you that you give us a like and follow our channel wherever you listen to your podcasts or watch these videos. This ultimately helps us reach more people like you.
Hello?
Hey, this has been Wendell Cohen, your show host. Thank you to all who made this show possible. This show is over. See ya.